Yo, what's going on, guys? It is your boy Nick here, back again with a brand new video today. This is now the 7th episode of my new series in which I review every single Sony Spider-Man Universe film up to the release of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Today we're going to be reviewing Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which came out in 2018 and was directed by Peter Ramsey, Bob Persichetti, or something like that. I'm not entirely sure how you pronounce it, but that's the name. And then Rodney Rothman, those are the directors of this film. So yeah, let's talk about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. So this was a very interesting film whenever it was announced because this was a Spider-Man movie that came out around the same time that Tom Holland came out as Spider-Man in the MCU. And so this came out a year after Spider-Man Homecoming and 2 years after Civil War. And it was interesting because we kind of had this new Spider-Man thing with Tom Holland. It was kind of interesting to have a whole nother Spider-Man thing in an entirely separate universe come out as an animated film during the same era. And so this is a film that probably took kind of a big risk, and it was also the first big successful Marvel animated movie. And so there were definitely some risks that were being taken with this movie, but there were also some things to look forward to. The main part being this being the first time Miles Morales, who's the comic book character, being shown on the big screen. The first time most people even knew about this character. And it was also kind of interesting to have a Spider-Man movie that's this uniquely in its own world, outside of just stuff going on in the MCU. And it came out also a few months after Venom came out, and Venom kind of took that risk too. And so this is a very interesting film that when it came out, it had all this kind of interesting stuff going for it. And if you guys have paid any attention to the reception for this film over the last almost 5 years it's been out, everybody loves Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I mean, I love it too. It's an excellent superhero movie. I can't wait to talk about it. Let's talk about why Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is a great movie. So right off the bat, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is one of the best looking animated films of all time. I don't even think that's up for debate. I think most people agree with me on that. I mean, it's a beautiful looking movie. You could honestly argue this being the best animated movie of the last decade. It's a beautiful looking movie. It's kind of interesting how it's got all the vibrant bright colors, but it's also texturized, so it kind of like comic book panels, where it's got the little circles and it's got the lines and stuff. It's such a cool, unique animation style, and I think it honestly might be my favorite animation style for any movie. Maybe. That's just how great it is. There's also incredible voice acting all around with a whole bunch of fantastic characters. Off the bat, Miles Morales is a breath of fresh air as the Spider-Man. He's voiced by Shameik Moore very, very well. And I like Miles Morales' character. Is very relatable and very gripping, kind of like the way that Peter Parker is in the live-action Spider-Man movies. But within Spider-Verse, Miles Morales has a totally different story. There's some elements that do kind of borrow from Peter Parker, but it's not just a copy and paste redo of that. I like the fact that they actually gave Miles Morales his own story to differentiate him from other forms of Spider-Man. It kind of goes to show you that Spider-Man doesn't have to be Peter Parker in order for you to like him. However, speaking of Peter Parker though, Peter B. Parker is a breath of fresh air as this new reincarnation of Peter Parker, voiced by Jake Johnson. And I like what they do with this character because it's kind of like the whole idea of let's take Spider-Man, who's been Spider-Man for all this time, and let's see how he would feel after being Spider-Man for a long, 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 long time, who was in his older age and gone through some stuff. And so I like the fact that they gave Peter B. Parker a new kind of route when it came to the writing, that they didn't just recycle from old stuff. Very original stuff they do with the Spider-Man in this movie, and I like that they did that. I like the fact they didn't just recycle old stuff. I like the fact they actually gave everything a new feel, and so this film feels like a breath of fresh air because of that. I also love the excellent banter between these two characters. That's one of the things that really worked for me about this movie was Miles Morales and Peter B. Parker being a Spider-Man team. They've never been a team before. They've never had a teammate or a sidekick or anything like that. So it was cool to see these two be each other's team members in this movie. They're a great duo. They're very funny. That's also what I really like. I really like the funny dialogue between these two. It's kind of like what I've said that I like about Falcon and the Winter Soldier or Hawkeye and Kate Bishop. I think it's really cool that we get to see Spider-Men be a thing instead of just having one Spider-Man in a movie. Also, Gwen Stacy, or Ghost Spider, who's voiced by Haley Steinfeld, who actually went on to play Kate Bishop in Hawkeye, is a great supporting character in Miles and Peter. I really do buy the friendship between her and Miles. It's kind of interesting because you can tell that Miles definitely has some feelings for her, but he's also okay with them just being friends, and their friendship feels authentic. And it starts off kind of awkward, but the fact that they're actually able to put away weird stuff that happened between them, and they're able to build a friendship for the kind of adventure that takes place in the film. This movie also has some more very fun supporting characters with Spider-Man Noir, voiced by Nicolas Cage, and Penny Parker and Spider-Ham, who I forgot to put their actors down, my apologies. They're kind of interesting because they're kind of more supporting characters than the other ones. I mean, because Miles and Peter are the two main ones really, and then Gwen is kind of a supporting character to them, and then these three are kind of just three supporting characters that are part of this cool spider team. And they're kind of interesting because they all have things that make them unique. Spider-Man Noir is kind of cool and mysterious looking, and Penny Parker's interesting because she's a Japanese anime character in a film like this, and so she's very fun and uplifting. Then also Spider-Ham. That was a big risk that I felt they took when they did the movie, and I actually kind of like what they did with it. It kind of showed that like they didn't have to take it overly seriously in order for you to care about these characters. I think that they add a very fun element to the team. As I said, this is a very funny movie. The humor works very, very well for me. And I like the fact that the movie doesn't overdo a lot of the parody elements, because there are some moments in this movie that almost feel like it's kind of parodying itself, kind of like the Lego Batman movie, but they don't go over the top with like the parody stuff to where it doesn't feel like a self-parody film. It feels like a Spider-Man movie with people of all sorts of different universes, and they throw just a couple little jokes and gags in there for Spider-Man fans. I really like the way that they do that in this movie. This movie also has a great soundtrack that fits the vibe perfectly. My only complaint is that some of these songs were kind of overplayed when they came out, but they are very fun songs. Actually, I feel fit in this nice world very well, because like the world is very vibrant and unique and weird and colorful and fun, and I feel like the music kind of like amplifies that feeling. And this is like the main thing about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse that I feel made most people like it, and why it kind of made everyone want to give it a chance, as opposed to being like, oh, it's another Spider-Man movie while this other stuff's going on, is the fact that this has a very original story for a Spider-Man movie. It truly, at the time, was something that we had never seen before, and it's, in my opinion, one of the most original movies of our time. I mean, there have been some movies that have come out within the last few years that are very much inspired by it, and I'll get to that later, but I feel like this is one of the most unique, not just animated movies of all time, just unique movies that have been made in the past 10 years. And I really do think that it's like, it's an iconic movie from the last decade. I think it's just going to continue to be iconic years down the road. Like, I really do think that in like 10, 15 years, people are going to be looking at Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse like they do at something like Toy Story. Miles' family is very interesting in this movie, and I'm not going to go too deep into it because it contains spoilers, but I really like the story about Miles with his dad and Miles with his uncle. Very interesting dynamic going on there. It kind of reminds me a little bit actually of what Tom Holland did in Spider-Man Homecoming, with like the dynamic with the villain and kind of like the stuff that happens in there, which I won't spoil, but it's kind of just cool to have like these like interesting weird little elements within this movie, because it actually like adds a layer of like grit to the movie, because it's a very fun and vibrant movie and like very lighthearted, but this grit part to it, gritty tone, actually like it balances it out very well, and it makes a great story. And for a film that has this many characters, it does a great job of fleshing out all the stories. And I feel like with this many characters, it's a very well-balanced movie. You don't spend too much time with every character. You spend enough time with the characters where you care about them and they're fleshed out very well. This film was also pretty important because it has some great representation for people of color, as excellent representation for the black community. I mean, our lead character in the film is black, and that was a big deal to have a Spider-Man movie starring a black actor. And I think the representation on that aspect was great. So there's also some good Hispanic representation because Miles Morales is half Hispanic. And there's also some good Asian representation because of Penny Parker. I like the representation in this movie. I mean, the story does come first, obviously, but I kind of like the fact that they were able to make this movie with a message like this, where it shows like anybody of any background can be somebody important. I think that the message of that film is very well done through its representation. Stan Lee's first Marvel cameo after his passing, may he rest in peace. He did technically do one cameo before this movie when he was in Ralph Breaks the Internet. He actually has like a small little cameo that's like not voiced at all, but this is like his first like Stan Lee cameo in a Marvel movie post his passing, and actually does voice acting in it, and I actually like his cameo a lot in this movie. I feel like it adds a nice part to the story. And yeah, this film is a great message about how anybody can be a hero. I mean, it doesn't matter where you came from or what you look like or what, it doesn't, like, none of that matters. All that matters is that you decide to put yourself first and you decide to have that leap of faith like they talk about in the movie and to do the right thing. That's what makes a hero, and I think that they deliver that message in this film like perfectly. It's such a great message for a movie. And this is kind of what I was talking about earlier when I talked about films and shows that kind of feel inspired by Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. There's some great concepts about the multiverse in this movie. It does kind of tease what could come down later in the line with what we have currently going on with the multiverse saga in the MCU. And this came out during the Infinity Saga, and it was outside of the MCU. But it does kind of show you a little glimpse of what a multiverse universe could be like. And like I said, so it feels ahead of its time in retrospect. I think it really paves the way for something like What If, which is another multiversal Marvel project that was also animated. It also definitely set the like blueprint for something like Spider-Man No Way Home, where we had a live-action Spider-Verse, and also feels very much like inspiration for Everything Everywhere All at Once, which is one of my personal favorite films in recent memory. And this feels like it was just ahead of its time in retrospect, and how I feel like we probably wouldn't have gotten any of these shows or movies in the way that they are had it not been for something like Spider-Verse to pave the way for it. Now, although this is a fantastic film and I highly recommend it to anybody who's never seen it, I do have a few flaws with this movie, but it's kind of like ones that I can overlook in the long run because of how great the movie is. The first one is that the villains in this movie are underdeveloped. Mainly Kingpin. That's kind of my only issue with the movie, really, is that Kingpin's our main villain. He's very underdeveloped. I mean, like, I feel like he could have been really cool, and he has some cool moments, but he doesn't really feel all that memorable as compared to the rest of the movie. Doc Ock was a lot of fun, though. I actually liked Olivia Octavius in this movie. I thought the voice acting for her character was a lot of fun. I think she was probably the most entertaining villain. She's not in it all that much, but for the time she's in it, she's very memorable. And I also have that Scorpion, who's another villain in this movie, has barely anything to do. He's not necessarily a bad villain. They just don't give him anything to do. So that's kind of like my one big issue with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, is the fact that the villains could have been better. And I can understand them not wanting to extend the runtime, because it's actually the shortest Spider-Man movie we've ever had, not including stuff like Venom and Morbius and all that stuff. This was under 2 hours. I understand that for a kid's film, they don't want to extend it past that, runtime, but I kind of feel like it would have helped. I feel like had they maybe extended it just a little bit, we could have had more time to get to know the villains better, but in the long run, I'll accept it because it's a great movie. Movies where it's like, yeah, it's not perfect, it's got like one thing that doesn't work, but like I'll accept it because everything else is so awesome that it's like, who really cares? Guys, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is an excellent superhero movie. It's one of my personal favorite Spider-Man movies. It's one of my favorite animated movies in recent years. It's a fantastic superhero movie. I'm going to give it an overall rating of a 9 out of 10. Very, very entertaining, and I'm going to give it an overall grade of an A. So those are my thoughts on Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I can't wait to talk about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, which I'm actually going to go see on opening night in a few weeks. Can't wait to talk about that. Next week, I will talk about Venom Let There Be Carnage. I'm excited to talk about that. And you guys will have a video in just a few days. Probably tomorrow by the time I post this for Moon Knight. I'm excited to talk about that. And actually next week I'm going to talk about Miss Marvel. And that's interesting because I actually haven't seen Miss Marvel yet, so I'm looking forward to watching that. So yeah, be on the lookout for all this stuff. Make sure that you hit the link in the description to go follow me on Twitch, Instagram, and TikTok, as I post a lot of content out there. Thank you guys so much as always for watching. Make sure that you hit the like button, hit the subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get notified when I post videos. Leave a comment down below letting me know what you think. And yeah, that's been it. Peace.